Hello, and welcome to North Country Matters. My name is Donna Seymour, and I'm a member of the St. Lawrence County branch of the American Association of University Women, one of the civic partners for this show. Today in the studio, I have Bess Kirnie with me, and our two guests are Heather Sullivan-Catlin and Ginger Storey-Welch, and they're going to talk to us about North Country 350 Alliance. Heather and Ginger, welcome to North Country Matters. Heather's an old friend and a guest. She's been a guest a number of times on the show. She's an associate professor of sociology at SUNY Potsdam. She's long been involved with Garden Share, served as their president from 2008 to 2013, and is currently active with North Country 350 Alliance, which is an organization which works on global climate change sustainability. Ginger, this is your first time, so welcome.
Thank you.
Serve as the North Country 350 Alliance Outreach and Education Committee Chair. You're retired from Colton Pierpont Central, and you developed many educational programs during your time there to discuss energy and the environment with the students at the school. So we feel very lucky to have two such educated and well-informed guests to talk to us about this issue. Bess, would you get us started?
Well, yes, thank you. Ginger, I just want to start with my trip from the parking lot to this building where I am scrambling over tall snowbanks and remembering back to one of the coldest Februaries on record.
It's actually the coldest.
Aha! So tell me how this fits into the picture of global warming.
That's a very reasonable question, actually, and I was actually asked something similar to this last summer when somebody said, how can you still be talking about this global warming stuff and climate change stuff in the face of the rather wintry winter that we had last year as well as this year? And I think my best answer is to look at something like this information from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. This map shows temperatures from across the globe for the year 2014, which, by the way, was the hottest year on record. We've had many of those recently. And if you look across the bottom here on the left, we have the darkest blue is record coldest. The blues are below average. The white is near average, the pinks are above average, and the red is the record warmest. And if you just look at the eastern United States, it doesn't look too bad. You know, most of it is below average, average, so what's the big deal? But when you're talking about global warming, you need to look at the big picture. And the big picture has vastly more pinks and reds than we have of the blues. I also find it instructive to look at the record breakers. For record coldest, we do have one little rectangle down here by Antarctica, just one, that is record coldest. So if you were there, you might think, what global warming? But when you start looking at how much record warmest, the red areas, it's just, there's no comparison. Something of special interest is the Atlantic, and this has led to a 10% increase in humidity above the ocean, which is a large factor in all of these snowstorms, these record-breaking snowstorms that we've been having this winter. And so, ironically, record-breaking warmest, in that case, is leading to record-breaking snowstorms as well. It's a complicated story.
Very interesting. I've noticed there's not a whole lot of white, meaning near average.
No. And you would think that that would be the dominant if it was truly average.
Yeah.
But we're gaining new averages.
The new average, yes.
So,
and I'd like to just follow up and say that what the new normal is also more volatile. There are more extremes in both directions. I enjoyed hearing Kurt Steger, who's a professor at Paul Smith's, who's a climatologist. He gave a talk last week in Canton, and one of the things that he talked about is more heat in the atmosphere, it's more energy, right? And so even though the climate, the global average temperature is up a degree or two over the last several hundred years, that's actually quite significant and is a whole lot more energy in the environment, creating greater storms. And the sea level rise is another aspect that is of particular concern. If you were to look at the map again, a lot of the heat is happening at the ice cap, which is melting, and really it's not so much the change in the weather that is of concern to us, but rather the socio-political effects that we're going to see in the coming centuries of all of this volatility. More storms. If we just look locally, look at the expense, the damage to our infrastructure. Are we going to have to divert a lot of funds in New York State that could be spent perhaps on education over to rebuilding bridges that were washed out thanks to a storm like Irene? And then at the more global scale, we have to be concerned about the millions and millions of people who are already beginning to be displaced from sea level rise, and the pressures that's going to put in terms of migration. If you look at people who are thinking about the issues that were going to confront us with global climate change, some of the most concerning reports are coming from our own military, who are seeing climate change as the most significant national security problem.
It leads to
facing
unrest.
us. Leads to unrest, and just looking at how we will be called upon in greater instances for humanitarian relief, responding to natural disasters. So all of these things are going to have an impact here, even if we're colder. Many farmers I've spoken to have said, oh, well, we're going to get a longer growing season. That's going to be great for us. But then you start talking to people who are, in cooperative extension and ag, and in fact, there's really just a whole lot more problem. There's, too much wet when you don't want it that way, too much dry when you don't want it that way.
We're
Pests
seeing the invasion
that we're
of
not
those kinds
exactly.
of not only farm pests, but also disease-causing vectors, the kinds like the ticks and mosquitoes and things like that.
Exactly.
So we're going to be seeing diseases in places that they've never historically been in. So
Exactly.
I actually talked to an insurance agent a couple of years ago that straight line wind that went through Potsdam, we had some damage to our roof, and I asked him, I said, what is your insurance company seeing? And he said exactly what you said, which is, we're not seeing more storms, but we're seeing storms that cover a wider geographic area and with much stronger effects, more rain, more wind, more damage. And so, when the insurance companies are paying attention to things like that and the military is paying attention to things like that, we have reached a point where this is a problem that can't be ignored anymore, except by politicians, apparently. So.
And only a few degrees of change over time can cause that kind of energy and volatility. That's amazing.
The Ice Age was only a few degrees colder on average than today. And that was the Ice Age. So a few degrees warmer. And I think about, what if it was your job? What if we gave you the job of, you need to increase the temperature of the Atlantic Ocean by 2 degrees?
That's a big job.
That's a big job.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of energy to do that.
Right. Yeah.
So 2 degrees is a big deal.
Good illustration.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Heather, you and Ginger are working on the North Country 350 Alliance, and we know that 350 was set as kind of the marker point. When we hit 350, we were going to be in trouble. But in fact, in February, the average carbon dioxide level was above 400 parts per million. So we've surpassed that we're in trouble mark, and now we're into a different kind of a place in terms of these markers. So explain to us a little bit about what 350 is locally and how that connects to the parent organization.
Yeah, and I want to say a little bit more about what 350 means as well. I think it helps to understand what the goals of the organization is. So 350 was identified by James Hansen, who is a NASA scientist, who's one of the main people who've been trying to help us all understand what's going on with the climate. And if you look at the last 800,000 years, the CO2 level, that is the parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere, were never above 280 until the Industrial Revolution, and we started to find fossil fuel, take it out of the ground and burn it, and thereby put more CO2 into the air. When we started to do that, the CO2 level started to go up. Now, every year, it goes up and down a little bit as, with the seasons, most of the land is in the northern hemisphere, so the trees leaf out when it's spring and summer in the north, and they take up a lot of the CO2, so it drops a little. But in the fall and winter, the leaves die, right? And so the level goes back up. Now that's been happening at like this little zigzag in this direction for as long as we have records. It's called the Keeling curve. The scientists at the station that measures this, it's named for. So we look at that, and the climate over the last century, the climate that we've pretty much built our whole industrial economy around, and the agriculture that we're used to engaging in, was in that heading up to 350. And we didn't start to go over that until the last few decades. But 350 is what is considered to be the level above which we cannot count on a stable climate. And that corresponds to the rise in temperature. So the organization 350.org was started by Bill McKibben, who's a writer and activist who's been trying to sound the alarm about this since his book in 1989 called The End of Nature. And he and a group of students, where he teaches at Middlebury College, started 350. And they used the number to help educate people. He wrote an article in Rolling Stone in 2012 called Global Warming's Terrifying New Math. And it has three numbers that are probably more important than 350 now, because we're not ever going to see 350 again in this century. The question now is where are we going to peak and come back down to? And the international leaders have been meeting through the UN's climate conferences. You've heard of some of them: Kyoto, where we got the Kyoto Protocol; Copenhagen, which was a miserable failure, unfortunately. There were high hopes for getting a good international agreement to cut CO2 emissions. What we did get at Copenhagen was agreement that we don't want to get our emissions above the level at which we would have a 2 °C increase in global temperature. That's about 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit. We are already almost 1 degree Fahrenheit warmer than at the start of the Industrial Revolution. So that's our target that international governments have agreed we want to head for.
And can I interrupt? That 1 degree, and look at the changes we're already seeing.
Exactly.
Something that's very visible in all of our lifetimes in terms of where we were as kids versus where our grandkids are now, right now. So
Exactly. So in that article, Bill McKibben gave us two other numbers. The first is 565. That's our carbon budget. That's how many gigatons of carbon scientists think we can put into the atmosphere and still stay below 2 degrees Celsius or 3.6 degree Fahrenheit global temperature increase. So that's 565. That's our budget. Like, from here on out, we can't burn more than that. And the terrifying number is the number that represents the known reserves that the fossil fuel, that's without any more exploration as the Arctic, thaws and so on. The known reserves that fossil fuel companies have on the books is almost 2,800 gigatons. So think of it this way. You have $2,800 in the bank, but somebody tells you can only spend 565 of those dollars. That's where we're at with CO2. We have plenty of fossil fuel there need be no more exploration. In fact, we have to stop burning it, period, and quickly. So what 350 is all about, and why we exist as a local chapter, is to try and it's the social movement. It's the people agitating to tell our leaders, please get the policies in place, make the international agreements, create the tax incentives, what have you, the carbon taxes, the cap and trade. There's so many different ways to go about it. But the bottom line is we have to get to a renewable energy economy, and fast.
We need to go on a diet.
Exactly. Super. Yeah, exactly. So the international 350 has been focused on political actions. You may have heard of some of them. The most recent one that they were part of was the People's Climate March in September in New York City, where we had over 400,000 people from, and probably more. I mean, it was just astonishing, like 80 plus blocks, New York City blocks, streets, packed elbow to elbow of people.
They were hoping for 100,000.
Yeah, all kinds of constituencies, and led, by the groups that will be affected disproportionately, the indigenous peoples of the world. Ban Ki-moon, the UN Secretary General, was there, and others. But that's just an example of one action. There have been many. Another goal has been to stop the Keystone Pipeline, in part because we have to leave those tar sands in the ground in Canada, and approving the pipeline will create an additional aid in those being excavated and shipped out and refined and burned.
Because the carbon cost of the tar sand oil is far greater than the carbon cost of the oils that we've been burning in the past.
That's right. And we've burned through the easy to access fossil fuels, and now we're digging deeper for the harder to reach stuff.
And the shale gas is
dirtier.
the shale gas is the same kind of thing in terms of, and people have been fighting that here in New York State. One of the things that we know politically is that our leaders don't lead. They wait to find out which way the wind is blowing, and so it's easy to go along with the people who are writing the checks to get you reelected, but the kind of social movement that 350 represents is one of those giant wake-up calls for our so-called leaders to say to them, this has to stop. It doesn't matter how much money you're getting kicked into your re-election campaign. You need to look beyond that and think about the good of all of us. So these social kinds of movements take a lot of work because it has to mobilize people who don't have the ready resources to buy the attention the way that the oil companies always have.
Mm-hmm. So what about people here in the North Country? What will local involvement mean in terms of the big picture of 350.org? And what are some of the local projects of North Country 350?
Well, thank you for asking. We always participate in the international 350's programs. For example, in February, we did an action at the post office in Potsdam on divesting, getting colleges and churches and places like that to divest from fossil fuels and invest in renewables. So we always do that, and we went to the People's Climate March and things like that. We've done some things like we tried to interview all three of the candidates for the House seat this fall. Wolf and Funicello responded. Stefanik did not respond to us. We also sponsor we have a monthly meeting, which is on the third Tuesday of every month at the Potsdam Community Center room, which is upstairs above the police station. It's from 6:30 to 8:30, and at 7:30 we have something that is open to anybody who wants to come, and it's usually something informational. We've shown some videos, we've had some speakers. This on the 17th of March, we'll be having someone from the St. Lawrence County Environmental Management Council come and talk about the EMC. And we sometimes relate petitions and things like that. And we have, do you want to talk about the event in April?
Yes. So one of the things, as we got together, we learned that there's so many different groups out there in the North Country working on environmental and sustainability issues. And a lot of us, aren't aware of each other and what our work is. And so we decided to create an event that we're calling a Sustainability Social. And it's going to be a party. We have the upstairs space at Between the Buns reserved. And we're going to have some live music, a cash bar, some refreshments. And we're inviting every organization that is doing something related to environment and sustainability in the North Country to come and have information out on tables and to meet each other. So it's about educating ourselves about the other initiatives that are going on. It's about building a stronger network among us. And it's, about celebration too. It's going to be Earth Day that month, right? So this is on Saturday, April 11th, from 2 to 5 in the afternoon, and that's at Between the Buns, and it is open to anyone.
Free.
And it is free. And so part of what we are trying to do is to spread the word that we need to do the bigger political actions. We need to get political change, policy change. None of us can do it alone by changing our light bulbs or, buying a Prius, right? These are a good start, but there's a lot to be done locally. There's a lot going on locally. In my intro, Donna mentioned Garden Share. This is an organization that's been around for more than 15 years now that is working to build a sustainable food system. That's part of building that resilient future that we need to have to prepare for the increase in storms, the increase in the socio-political instability that we may face. There are a lot of other groups who are working on these issues as well. The Local Living Venture has a sustainable living festival every 18 months. The next one is in September. There's a lot people can learn about renewable energy, practices of their own. And these are the kinds of things that we want to get the word out about. So we want to get the global political change, but also build a more resilient North Country.
There's a great bumper sticker that's been out for years called "Think Globally and Act Locally," and that's almost like a model or a motto rather for the kinds of things that you're talking about here, isn't it?
Right.
Is to understand how we fit into the bigger picture and make sure we take care of business here at home as well.
Exactly.
We both, but at separate times, saw the Solar Home Companion, a little play on the Prairie Home Companion on public radio, but it was called the Solar Home Companion, which was created by Josh Fox, who produced Gaslands.
Right.
And I saw it on Sunday, you saw it in Ithaca. It was wonderful, and one of the things that they said there was that someone was saying, I think it was to Bill McKibben, that what should we be doing? What should I be doing to protect myself with these changes that are coming? And he said, move to an area where there's a strong local community, where there's a lot of sense of community. We've got it here.
Yes.
I mean, we are so blessed with having real neighborhoods, and somebody's house burns down and, people are doing fundraisers, and somebody's sick and people are helping, and somebody dies and the community comes together and it's so supportive. And that fabric, that community fabric, is so critical for times like this. I'm grateful to be here.
I think that the social that you're having in April is going to be an opportunity for people to be exposed to multiple local efforts, so that should be exciting.
And anybody's welcome.
There's a couple of other things that I want to mention. It occurs to me. Bill McKibben himself, the founder of 350, will be at SUNY Canton on Wednesday, April 1st at 6:30 p.m. That's open to the public, that talk. And that's in Ruse House, which is the big athletic facility.
And that can take a lot of people.
Yeah, so come on
by all
out
means,
and
come out,
see Bill
yeah.
himself. There's also a wonderful project that St. Lawrence University has been hosting for many, many years called the North Country Symposium. It was originally the BERT Symposium, and that's been always about building our local resilience, our local economy, and they'll be bringing Michael Schumann, the author of many books about these issues, back again this year, and that's happening, I believe, in early April. And if people
It's around
Oh, yes.
April 20th because my husband is helping to organize it.
Right. So if you go to St. Lawrence University's website and look for that, you can find more information. That's generally open to the public as well, and is about building, our local economy. And we should mention our meetings and how to get in touch with us before
Yes.
we
I
run
did
And
out
I
of
did
time.
put,
Yeah.
I did put one of the graphics that'll be on the show is your Facebook page, which there's always a
Excellent.
lot of great information on that, so people can go to that, and that would be
you.
a good way to be connected and to continue to find out what's going on. So
Good.
give us a
then-
quick primer on
so-
how to get involved in terms of coming to a meeting.
So any third Tuesday, we will be at the Potsdam Civic Center at 6:30 p.m. And in the meantime, if they would like to we have an email list. We use Google Groups for that, but you can email Ginger to get signed up for that. And her email address,
Storeygi, STOREYGI, at cpcs.us.
Well, Ginger and Heather, thank you both very much for coming in. I know very well that we could spend at least another half an hour talking about all of this, and we'd like you to think about coming back in another semester and maybe updating us on some more. I remember seeing the picture of everybody standing outside the post office a couple weeks ago, and it was a mighty cold day. So thank you for your dedication and for going that extra mile for all of us. And I'm so glad to hear you talk about what a great sense of community we have here in the North Country, because that is absolutely one of our strengths. And it's folks like you who help to build that. And I'm looking forward to some of the events that you've talked about. So thank
Wonderful.
you. Thank you. Thank you, Bess. Our time is up. So these conversations are a production of North Country Matters, produced here in the studios of WCKN on the campus of Clarkson University. This show is a civic collaboration between the St. Lawrence County branch of the American Association of University Women, the St. Lawrence County League of Women Voters, and the Communication and Media Department here at Clarkson. Until next time, remember, our North Country matters.